Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Bite Size Brief. Today, we're joined by Syed Hassan. He's our Director of Cybersecurity, and we're going to be talking about AI and specifically AI data leakage. Could you share some thoughts on what is it, data leakage, and how does AI play a role in that?
I think it's a very crucial topic for nowadays. Everybody or every company is running towards making sure that they adapt AI as soon as possible. Some companies are running towards AI adoption so much that they're ignoring the guardrails and the compliance pieces. And that's what leads to the data leakage and the exfiltration of the data.
So, when you say data leakage, tell me more about that. What is data leakage and why does it happen?
A simple case could be you have deployed one of the AI agents into your environment, and that agent has access to anything and everything that is within your environment. You have not defined the guardrails. So if I am to query what does one person make yearly, that data, if it is provided to the agent, anybody can have access to. So that is a very simple way of showing or talking about data leakage, people having access to data that they should not have access to. AI adoption is the world right now. Every organization is moving towards making sure that they have some sort of AI working for them. And it has really helped people from productivity perspective, for making sure that it increases the potential and the efficiency within an organization. So all that is positive. However, some companies, in order to get there faster, they have ignored the compliance pieces, they ignore the guardrails, and then they allow that AI to have access into areas which should not have access to. And if they expose that agent to external world, it is very easy for external bad actor to go ahead and exfiltrate data from that agent if the right guardrails are not in place.
Yeah, I think that's a great point that you made, Syed, about the importance of guardrails. Can you speak to that a little bit more about what those guardrails could be, how they get put into place, and how they help with compliance without restricting the opportunities of AI?
Depending on the size of your organization, you may follow certain frameworks. NIST has also provided their compliance guidelines. ISO 42000 is out there for companies to follow and make sure that they have sufficient guardrails around their infrastructure and the environment to prevent any data leakage. However, the same principle applies for cybersecurity, due care and due diligence. You can make sure that you do your due care and you have to do your due diligence to make sure that you go beyond what is recommended by compliance frameworks to make sure the data that you are working with is safe. You may be working with Claude, ChatGPT, Geminis, and you think you have credentialed access to them, your data may be safe, but that isn't the case. You have to make sure that you put the guardrails, making sure that it only has access to data that it needs in order for you to get the productivity that you out of it. Anything more can expose you to data leakage. If you're working with your own respective models, you need to make sure that you use techniques to have the machine learning to define the boundaries that your LLM agents or your AI agents can go and access. Anything more than it needs always leads to risk of having that data leakage and exfiltration.
So you're talking about guardrails, Syed. As people start to look at that, as companies start to look at that, putting the right guardrails in for the use of LLMs, how does that work? What should they be looking at, and how should they get started with that?
I think basics, again, making sure that cybersecurity principles are applied. Regardless of the size of company, if you can pick any of the compliance frameworks that you want to have in your environment, could be NIST, could be ISOs. Just make sure that you have the due care aspect of things implemented, making sure that if the compliance is saying that these are the controls that you need to have them at the bare minimum level, and that will give you what you need at least to put the guardrails around. Now, the due diligence aspect of things is to make sure that not only you test them, but also identify areas that are applicable to your company. Some companies have the capacity to have a compliance program. However, most companies nowadays do not have the capacity. And a lot of work that we are getting from Forteller perspective is to do the assessment and let the companies know exactly what is needed for them to get to the compliance level that they should have for their respective industry. So yeah, pick up any frameworks, make sure that you follow that to the T, and that will give you the bare minimum guardrails that you need in order for you to achieve that level of security. In the case of data leakage, especially from AI perspective, DLPs are also adapting. Microsoft provided DLPs, which are data leakage prevention tools you can deploy. However, the basics are still the same. You need to classify your data, making sure that you have confidential data separately classified than data that is publicly available. Only then you can understand, or your DLP can understand, what data the AI agent can have access to and can move around, and what is the data that your DLP will not allow to move around. As I mentioned earlier, the principles are still the same. However, due care and due diligence is needed to make sure that not only you provide bare minimum guardrails, but you do extra risk assessment of your company and your organization to identify those use cases and prevent against them as well. There are a number of tools that are currently available. DLP is out there, data management tools are there. Go utilize them to make sure that AI does not have access to your personal or confidential data.
Well, this has been a really insightful conversation, Syed. I appreciate you coming on to share your knowledge. Thanks again for joining us. It's always a pleasure to have you on.
Thank you for having me. Look forward to next time.
And that's it for this bite-sized brief. We'll see you on the next one.